Alright guys, we've done sabers, we've done archers, and now we gotta do lances. And you might notice something, your boy is turned into Morgan. That's thanks to the guy Maloot over on our Discord. If you want to get some cute little artwork, go ahead and give that guy some work, because doesn't this Morgan look absolutely smug? I love it. And look at this, I'm living the dream. I'm now my husband. So everything's going pretty good. But yeah, we're going to be doing the Lancer tier list over here today. Obviously, we'll go over the rules that if you've been keeping up with these videos, you should know that we're just going over all of the units that are on NA as of the last day of 2023. So, you know, the last Lancer that released was Ryoma over there for Guda Guda, so we're not counting anybody else. And then all of the buffs are very similar, right? Like, we're only going off of how they are at the very end of 2023. So even though Karna got a very good buff for JP's anniversary, he's not going to be getting that when we talk about him in this video right here. So without further ado, you know, these can be a little bit long, so I want to stop yapping. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Obviously, this will be at the top of the description if you want to make your own tier list. Go into the Discord and be like, this is what I think as far as lances are concerned. Or I should also have it as like a pinned comment as well if you don't want to look in the description for some reason. So I'll have that there if you want to make your own tier list. Obviously, got them all ordered in terms of release. Let's start with this video. Now, first and foremost, we're starting with the banger. That's Ku. I don't know if I really have to shill for Ku all that much, because Ku is just going to be a very good, very strong, aging free-to-play unit. You know, he's one of those 4- or 5-star units in disguise because he just doesn't go down. The triple dodge with no turn restriction is still very good. I mean, he also has the guts. He has the debuff cleanse. He's very good for soloing content. Having the sure hit and now the ability to raise his attack after they gave him the buff, I believe it was last anniversary, that was very strong, because it was the one thing I kind of maybe had Ku in like BB plus around that point, was that he didn't really do a lot of damage, so it was kind of hard for you to, you know, get through some of these quests a little quickly. But now Ku can still have that insane survivability, but he's also now got the ability to do some really solid damage. So I think the guy's absolutely great. You know, I don't really think I need to shill for Ku all that much, because the dude is very good. I'm sure we all know that Ku is very solid. On the other hand, there's Liz. Now, I'm not putting Liz in D tier. I don't think she's, you know, gutter garbage trash, but Liz unfortunately has the niche of being able to double buff females, and then on top of that, be able to lower the enemy's defense to kind of be a bit of a damage support, but there's not really anything else she's doing outside of that. And unfortunately, what Liz is doing is not something that we really need anymore. You know, it's just not something that, as of, you know, we're moving into year 7 now, that you can't really consider that it's all that useful. It was very good back in the day when nodes were a lot more simple. You know, challenge quests were kind of just beat up people and do as much damage as you can. Being able to double buff females was very strong, but nowadays it's just not quite all that needed. Benkei over here, okay, Benkei is kind of interesting because Benkei has a taunt, he has a skill seal, and he's an NP seal. He's got a lot going for him, but there is just really no reason I would ever really see you bringing Benkei as opposed to literally anybody else. I mean, you could bring a Mash that's going to offer you defensive utility, who's also free to play, has the same taunt, has a targetable invincibility, 20% battery. I mean, you have other free-to-play options that are just better. I guess if you're really having to scrape the bottom of the barrel, or let's say you're doing an FGO account where you only use Lancers, right? You're doing a Lancer-only run, then maybe someone like Benkei would shine a lot more. But it's good stuff that he's got. It's just not really needed, in my opinion. No, it's very good utility, but I don't really see why you'd ever want to break that out. Proto Ku is kind of just like Caster Ku, but you subtract a little bit of the survivability for some Wild Beast and crit, you know, damage and utility, but I just don't think that's as useful to go for. Also, his damage tends to be, I don't know why, I don't think their damage is that far apart from each other. You know, even like, you know, without the Wild Beast power model, without the attack buff, but it just feels like this guy just never really does damage, right? It just doesn't feel like he's quite as good. If you use Proto Ku, because I know that when I started the game, I thought he was going to be way better than this one because he's got the crit damage and everything. It's the same survivability, but more damage, so surely he would have been better. But no, it just turns out that they kind of went a little too far into giving him damage, and he just kind of pales in comparison to the other Ku. But he's still not bad if you, for some reason, want to change him around, or you want to use the prototype Ku. He's still solid, but I don't think he's all that great. Leonidas. So Leonidas, I think, in the way that Benkei over here wants to be a little bit of a utility unit, Leonidas will always have that. For one, for soloing, just being a level 1 unit you can bring to just have him get knocked out. That'll always be very good if you want to solo, because without units like him, soloing would be a lot more annoying. So you do have to give them prompts for that. But Leonidas also can just be a solid unit for you, providing the taunt is still taunting himself again on the NP, having the guts to keep himself around a little bit longer and give himself the buster buff. You could theoretically use him in solos as like, oh, well, I'm still going to let him get taunted and beaten. Say it's like a Saber or Berserker boss that could definitely take him out in one hit. But then he still drops off the buster buff. Like, that stuff is just kind of nice. Like, I still think Leonidas is rather solid. If you want to use him as a little bit of a kind of like a baby version of Arash, where like he's gonna go down, so he's gonna cycle out another buffer or something, I think he's still very good for that. I mean, Romulus, I could technically put you a little bit higher than Liz because damage is solid. You have the Imperial Privilege, and you have the battery, so you could be used in some farming capacity. I guess you have some value, but it's just they're not really doing anything special. So I could give you the C+ because you actually have some applicability there, but aside from that, I don't really think you're doing very much. Hector, we're still kind of waiting for him to get fixed up a little bit. It's very ironic. I finished reading Okeanos, and Hector is really OP, and Okeanos, he's kind of like the main threat you got to take down, but then gameplay-wise, he's got a stun. He's got some damage, and that's really about it. I mean, he could poke somebody really hard with the Rondel, but that's kind of about it. But speaking of someone that's going to poke you and do a lot of damage, you got Skyhawk over here. Now, do I make the A+ tier for Skyhawk? Let me look. So I'm looking at some of the people that are probably going to end up in EX. I think I could put Skyhawk in A+. I really do like Skyhawk. I've really come around on Skyhawk as a unit. And you guys know that over the years, I've really been like not a hater of Skyhawk, but it's just, oh, we don't need to have this like really insane one-turn damage anymore. We're not in year one, but the more and more I use her, and the more and more I get to use her with, especially like double Scotty, stuff along those lines, now that I have that on both versions, she's pretty nice. I think Skyhawk can actually do some pretty good damage, because even after she fires the NP, Scotty pretty much fixes all of her problems that she needs for that. But then, even if you don't have Scotty, she has her own battery, and she still has the very weird NP gain ability to refund on her buster cards, which is hilarious. But also, borderline having a guaranteed stun on pretty much anyone who just does not have straight up debuff immunity or stun immunity is really insane. I think that is super, super good, because that just buys you a free turn and fight. So even if you need to kind of wait to get back to your better buffs to, kind of come back off their cooldowns, you can kind of buy yourself that time, especially if you do happen to have double Scotty. But even if you don't, people like Waver, who's like a free-to-play, can definitely help you get to another NP in between. Him draining NP and stunning, and Skyhawk over here borderline just stunning everybody. I think she's very strong. And her power mods against Divinity, I think, is also very, very strong as well. So I think definitely deserves to be in that A+ tier. She's also, got the one-turn dodge. Her crits are very nice. So I've come around a lot on Skyhawk. I really like using her more and more. Diarmuid, unfortunate. I don't believe we have his buff yet. But once he gets his buff, I believe this upcoming anniversary, 7th anniversary, is when I believe he gets his buff. It's either 7th or 8th, but I want to say it's this year. I think he's getting it. He actually slowly becomes a real unit. Like, he will jump into C tier. He's not insane, but he's at least a real unit. You can actually use him now. Okay, sorry about that. My phone just scared the living Jesus out of me. But yeah, after he gets his arts and quick buff, he actually becomes a decent, real unit. Speaking of, I guess, decent kind of real units is Lancer Artoria. Now, you can't quite use her for farming, but I don't want to put her there with Liz, because you can get some pretty good damage out of Lancer Artoria Alter over here. Like, her damage is pretty nice. The crit skill, I do find to still have some kind of use if you want to bring her into some type of challenging, difficult content. And maybe it's a little bit of a bias of having Lancer Artoria versus Liz, but I do think you get a little bit more out of her. She's kind of a more complete package, whereas Liz kind of seems to have a kit from more of a bygone era. Although I don't think Liz is, far beyond repair or anything like that. I think you definitely can get some work with Liz if they would just give her like another solid buff or something, which probably will happen. It's Liz. Next we have Karna. Now, Karna's in a very weird position, because using him on JP, the guy is really insane. But then using him on NA, I do still think he probably slides into that B tier, because having an anti-divine power mod and having really good damage that also, he can kind of capitalize on a second NP, because he gives him that buster down on his NP. I think you can get some really solid, strong damage out of this guy. The fact that he also has an NP seal is kind of useful. And then the third skill, even though it's an awkward 25% battery, still gives him Stargen and crit damage. So you know, he could still be kind of useful in those areas. I don't think he's, you know, Dookie dog water. I think he got off a lot better than Arjuna did, but you know, we can't really put him anywhere higher until they do fix the third skill, which was this last anniversary over on JP. So we're still about 2 years away from that, or I guess closer to like a year and a half, but still a little bit off from that. But I'm real excited for when he does get that. Fion, I think is very slept on, very, very underrated. If you want to use this guy as a looping servant, he can do that. Brother's got a taunt, brother's got a dodge. He can do solid enough damage, nothing super crazy, but solid enough that if you want to bring him as like a trash mob clear and say like a CQ style of a fight or something along those lines, or a boss fight where there's a lot of trash mobs, you know, Fion could definitely take care of that. And his looping is not bad. I mean, he's just kind of a solid AoE arts lancer, you know, all things considered. All right, Brynhild. Brynhilder, I think because I do think there's a little bit of a gap between Brynhilder and Skahawk. I do, as time goes on, tend to like Skahawk a little bit more than Brynhild, but I don't want to like not acknowledge what Brynhild's able to do. Plus, Brynhilder Beloved is, you know, not the largest, you know, power mod for somebody to have, but it is a decent bit of servants. And they have slowly started to fix her up by, you know, giving her stuff like the battery and making like the star weight and everything like that targetable. So she can kind of go from being your damage dealer to also kind of being a pseudo support. But she doesn't have the same ability as, say, Chiron or Nero Bride, who did end up in that A tier area. For me, that they don't really have that same ability to flip-flop from being a support and a DPS, because Brynhilder still kind of wants to be your DPS, but I'm fine with putting her in B+, because I think she's actually fairly solid. I do tend to notice there's a couple of NP gain problems with her when I do break her out every now and then, but I think she's solid enough. Li Shuin. Li Shuin's very hard for me to rank, but I do think I kind of consider him kind of in that same vein. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of DPS like burst damage guys, people that are only really good for one turn. But Li Shuin, when he's doing damage for one turn, he can do some pretty good damage, and then also has the dodge to keep himself around, and then pierces invul, so that guarantees basically that burst damage is going to go through. You know, they can't dodge, they can't invul through it. You know, you're going to get smacked by the Heavenly Spear over here. And so even though he's kind of more of a burst guy, I do like Li Shuin. I've been using him a little bit more after somebody made a joke that for one of the Lost Build 6 fights, I should have used Li Shuin for it. I started leveling him up, and then I've, you know, been taking him to more and more CQs, and I'm like, this guy's not half bad. Like, you know, Li Shuin's not all that bad. I do kind of enjoy using him, and on JP, you know, you kind of have to use him for some quests for the Samurai Remnant event. And I'm like, this guy's not all that bad. Like, I do like Li Shuin. I think you get some pretty solid value out of him. All right, Lancer Artoria. Okay, so here's the problem. So Lancer Artoria and Karna, I kind of see them in a similar vein. And here, let me explain what I mean by this. Because Karna, you know, he has the damage on her, but he, you know, loses his buff after a turn, and then he doesn't have the ability to farm as well because he only has a 25% battery. Lancer Artoria has the godsend 50% battery, but then they just, I don't know why, they messed up so hard on the first skill. They messed up so badly in making them one turn. They had a chance to make it a 3-time for 3-turn type buff. That would have been so nice for Lancer Artoria, because then she would just be sitting in A tier or even A+, because her damage isn't crazy, but at least she has good power mods, right? Because they decided to give her 2 of them, and she has a 50% battery. She would be really solid, but now she's just kind of stuck being like, well, you know, I'm kind of living and dying off of this first skill buff, and even with the ability to loop it, you know, you just kind of get it back by the third wave when you're using her as a farmer. You don't get to stack it. Like, and that's one of the strongest things that Buster farming can let you do, is that you can stack your buffs by getting them back. And she just doesn't have that ability. And it makes me so mad because I love Lancer Artoria a lot. I still use her. I still break her out whenever I can. But man, it makes me upset because she got hoed so badly on that one, because they just set her up for failure, because her kit's not bad. Like, baseline, as you look at it right now, debuff cleanse, 50% battery, a buster buff, 2 power mods, pierce invul on the NP. That in and of itself, that is the makings of a good unit. But you got, like, Lysengal, please come back and fix this unit. Please fix both of them, please. Actually, I don't like seeing them this low. Please do something to help them out just a little bit. Thank you. But it just really makes me upset that they have to be this low. Tomalancer. Tomalancer's a little bit weird, because she has the anti-male niche, but until she really gets the 3rd skill buff, I don't really think she's all that great. Which, unfortunately, we're just about a month or 2 away, because she gets it in the Learning with Manga type event, and that's when she gets her buff, and it really fixes up her 3rd skill. But I think You know, she's probably still like C plus ish because her niche is pretty good being anti-male. Having the charm, I guess, is kind of nice. Plus the attack buff gives her decent enough damage. The goddess metamorphosis skill is still strong, but I think we are probably still waiting for that buff before she really starts making it into like B plus-ish territory. I think it does make a big impact on. I mean, even given like the 30% battery is very strong. Kiyohime, man, look how they massacred my boy. They even came back to buff her for the most recent anniversary, and it just didn't really do anything for her. It's a step in the right direction, but she just needs so more. She just needs so much more. I mean, she's just infamous for not being super great. I don't think I need to talk about why Kiyohime's not all that great, because I mean, I don't want to kick a horse while they're down. You know, let's just hope that they give Kiyohime Lancer some buffs in the future, and maybe she'll rise from the ashes, as it were. Okay, so I have a little bit of an inflated view on Vlad Extra, because this was the first unit I got to NP5, because this is about when I really started playing on my current account, and when I started really going hard and playing FGO. And this guy's carried me a lot, but I do recognize he has a lot of problems. And so I'm going to kind of meet you guys in the middle. You know, I'm going to put him around where Tama Lancer's at, because, you know, a lot of his buffs are kind of one turn, but the evil power mod is good. But I also do know that even though I have him at NP5, I guess I was going to say that I have a bit of an inflated view on how much damage he can do, but no, even at NP5, sometimes I do think the guy could probably doing better damage, which is a little bit sad when they're, you know, NP5 like that. So I'll slap him around Tama Lancer, and we'll call that a deal. You know, we'll call it even. She's just not very good, man. She's just not very solid. If you can get her to fire her NP before somebody else, it's kind of like a buff, because she gives the entire party that one-turn attack buff, so that, you know, if you want to fire that before you fire another NP, it can be kind of good. But other than that, I mean, 55% Buster Mana Burst is solid, and, you know, 20% battery is okay, but Santa Jalta really just needs some buffs. He's just not super great. But you know who is super great? My boy Bingu. Put this guy up there. My boy Bingu is kind of crazy. Now, I don't know if he's more crazy than Skahawk. I don't know, because they kind of fulfill different roles. You can use Enkidu as a DPS servant, and he'll do absolutely fine. I mean, having the threat against humanity and the divinity stun is very strong for the same reasons that, you know, Skahawk having the stun is very strong. But I don't know, he's more of like a solo servant, I feel, that you try to use him like that, because he does have the massive 10k heal, and he can, you know, not only give himself a dodge, but also steal enemy dodges. I think Enkidu is very, very strong. I think he's super, super good. I think they actually gave him a buff recently on JP when they buffed Gil, but I don't remember what it was. The only weird gimmick about Enkidu is that, yes, you do get the guaranteed Buster buff, but, you know, the arts and the quick buff, depending on what you're going for, depending on what kind of chain you're going to be doing, can be a little bit awkward because it's a coin flip chance to get the arts or quick buff. But realistically, if you're using him as a solo servant, you can just, you know, take the arts buff as a big NP gain buff, or the quick buff as also an NP gain buff. It's fine, you know, he's strong. Medusa Lily? I can't put her in C tier because she at least has stuff going for her. She's got the stun. Her damage is decent enough. I believe they also gave her the guts recently, or she already had that. I'm trying to make sure I'm not getting my buffs all mixed up over here. But I can't put her in like C because I don't think she's like barely, because this is like barely usable or like very like niche usability. But Medusa Lily, you can get some value out of. I think she can be kind of strong if you want to use her with double Scotty, but I don't know. That might also be me being a little bit nice, because, you know, these guys at least have power mods, and these guys, I mean, you can use him in farming, and she's at least got some good, decent damage. So, I don't know. Maybe that's me being a little bit nice, but I'll let you guys decide that in the comments if I'm being too nice to her. Jaguar Man. Unlike Bedivere, unfortunately, who Bedivere as a story lock servant I get to rate at NP1, Jaguar Man just feels like they're still waiting on the buff. But even then, when they got their buff, it helped them out in getting to their third skill buffs. But we're still waiting for probably, I would say, another buff after that. Jaguar Man's a little bit awkwardly built. Not unusable, but you really do have to be a Tyra enjoyer. Not a Tyra, a Taiga enjoyer, my bad. They both got the Tai in the name, all right? You got to forgive me on that one. But if you're a real Taiga enjoyer, you can go out of your way and you can get some value out of her over here. But I still think we need the most recent buff that she got that made accessing her other skills a lot easier. And then I think we need probably one more buff after that. And then she should rise to being at least like BB plus tier. I think if she just gets a very solid buff, you know, after that. Lancer Raiko. See, I like Lancer Raikou, but that might be a little bit of my bias because I like her as a unit that is able to double as a solid DPS and also drop some good stars, you know, and kind of be a little bit of a damage support because she can also pass off the Buster buff to somebody else. So let's say Lancer Raikou is like your primary DPS that you're using, and then, you know, the fight goes on and, you know, maybe your guys are starting to go down. Someone else comes in, like maybe a backup DPS. I know that's still something that people will do. And so, like, let's say you got, I don't know, your Karna in the back. And you're like, okay, Karna, you take it from here. I'm going to give you the attack buff. I'm going to give you the Buster buff. And I just think that utility is kind of nice. I don't think it's particularly crazy, but I do like the Lancer Raikou. And I do think she could probably use a buff to help her out because her skills are a little bit basic. But I think there is some value in that basic nature that she's got going on. Parvati's kind of nuts. Parvati's really good. In fact, considering that she is a quick looper and she's able to loop as easy as she does, do I put her in EX tier? Is Parvati really that good? I think Parvati, if we're looking at like quick loopers that are in like the Lancer tier, I don't even think it's close. Because Parvati starts to like punch up and tries to compete with a lot of the other quick like loopers. Like Parvati is absolutely nuts. And I feel like I have a huge deep appreciation for Parvati because during the Scotty meta, I did not have my own Scotty. I had to rely on bringing a friend and then, you know, just hoping that the quick loopers were good enough, right? And the only two people that were able to get it done for me was Lancelot, but that's because he was NP5, because if he was NP1, that boy is hitting people with the strength of a wet paper towel. But then Parvati over here, who is NP1 and just never failed me a single time. You know, Parvati, anytime I had the ability to use her and she would be able to go into a stage, she just clapped it up. She's just insanely good. Absolutely love Parvati. And then if you want to bring her to challenge quest, I mean, Lost Belt 4's fantasy tree is pretty infamous for Parvati being able to pretty much farm that final node. So she's even good if you want to bring her into challenge quests. Hozuin I've definitely calmed down a little bit on. I used to think he was kind of like up here. He was like Ku tier. Now I kind of think he's just a Ku alternative. Like, it's kind of nice if you want a more offensively based Ku that has some good survivability, but I've kind of calmed down a little bit on him. I don't think he's quite as good the more and more I've used him, but I think he's still solid. Neza. Do I put Neza in D tier? Is she that bad? I don't really care for Neza very much. She doesn't really do. I mean, no, she's got like a bad. Okay, like, I'm talking crazy. I'm talking crazy. She at least does have like a solid enough kit. She has all the buffs that I would kind of expect somebody to have. She's not that bad. Okay, let me calm down. Let me relax. She's not that bad. But I mean, what else do you want me to say? Like, she's borderline usable, and that's about all you're gonna get out of me. Thank God we are post Ereshkigal buff because Ereshkigal is nuts. Love Ereshkigal. Very good as a solo unit. You can bring her with, you know, buffers as well, and then she can just cruise through challenge quests. She can farm now. She can farm sabers with the Earth Attribute Power Bond modus. Like, what else do you want from her? She's insane. But I don't think I have to tell you guys that Ereshkigal is quite good. The Valkyries. Valkyries are always kind of just living in Parvati's shadow because I think that if that demonic insta-kill that they have on their overcharge was like a power mod or something, that would help them out a lot. But they do have really high hits on their NP, and they have really good natural NP gain that I'm like, maybe I could bump them up into A tier. I think they're very good, and I think when a quick unit is starting to perform very well, especially as a quick looper, I gotta give them more praise. But I also don't want to be too biased because everybody knows that I am Quick's staunchest defender. Even though I am an art simp, I do want to defend the weak that is Quick because they get bullied too much. And so, I don't know, maybe it's fine if Parvati's kind of representing Quick way up here, and then the Valkyries over here make it in B+. Maybe that is fine. Hot Dog Oni, not super great. I mean, just, I guess she's fine. She's solid. I feel the same way about her as I do Neza, that if you want to use Ibaraki, you can. Like, she has solid enough buffs, but again, she's just not doing anything super crazy. Why are you still here? Ignore the Maeve. Why does this still happen? I literally took you out 5 minutes ago. Hold on a minute. There, boom, just like that, I solved the problem. I literally took her out before the recording started because I did not want that meme to keep reliving. I did not want that to come over from last year, so I made sure that I removed her, and she's still here. Okay, got rid of her. She's gone. Anyway, No, oh no, I'm literally playing into the meme. I can't remember her name, okay, but she's good. She's just like baby Lancer Super Orion, right? Like she kind of does the same thing where like, you know, you pop the NP and you can start building up damage. She does a lot of face card damage. You know, she does the crits. What is her name? What is her name? Kin Liangyu, that's her name. Okay, I do remember. I'm not a fraud. I do remember what she is. But she is Baby Super Orion, and I think that does land her in being in B tier. She is solid. If you want to take the time to actually use her, she can be very good, because she, again, is just Baby Super Orion. She's not going to hit the same heights that he hits, but she can do some really good work. You can put the Lord's work in with Kin Liangyu. Okay, I'm not forgetting her name. I'm not a fraud, I swear. She is good. All right. Kagetora. I'm trying not to be biased for Kagetora. I'm just going to put her in A tier because I'm really trying not to be biased. You know, I'm going to put her in A+. Right? I'm going to slide her up to A+. Just put her up there a little bit because, look, everything that Li Xuan is as a burst damage dealer, that's my girl Kagetora up there. Except she's got the NP gain, the attack buff, the support for the party. She's a free NP5, so her damage is nuts. Does she deserve to probably be an A+? Probably not. She probably does deserve to be an A, but you got to let me simp every now and a while. Okay, you got to let me simp every now and then for the servants I really like. Okay, you can, you know, just pretend that I put her in A tier, but just let me throw her up there. Plus, doesn't this look nice? Quick Buster Art single targets. That looks super nice, right? So just, you know, give me a pass on this one. Gareth, I think, is rather solid, but I do think as a 2-star, she's kind of held back by her stats a little bit. Gareth was one of those new free-to-plays that when we got the batch of them, I was really expecting her to be really broken, and she wasn't quite what I was expecting when release hit. Then she got her buff for Lost Belt 6, and then she kind of landed into this more like C+ hits tier, where I think she kind of can put in work, but I think timing is everything with Gareth. You really want to time when you're getting all of the hits on her to build up the attack buff, and then you want to be able to capitalize with the NP to do really good damage. But sometimes the timing just doesn't work out, or sometimes you get really bad turns where the enemy just will not attack you. They just want to spam skill buffs or whatever else, right? And then it gets really, really annoying. So I think she's fun to use, but I think she can be a little bit frustrating. All right, Summer Melt. Okay, Summer Melt, I'm going to meet people in the middle because I know people want to put like Summer Melt up here in like A+ tier, but I have an NP1 Summer Melt, so I think my expectations for her are a lot more realistic. I'm going to meet y'all in the middle. I'm going to put her around that B+ area where like Theon is at. Because at NP1, her damage can kind of feel like Summer Mordred's, where they loop all their NP back, they just didn't do enough damage to actually kill the enemy. And that can be a bit of a problem if you're trying to 3-turn things. And again, I'm looking at the gacha servants at NP1 because, you know, you're not guaranteed to even get 1 copy of them, much less 5 copies. And so at NP1, that can definitely be a problem for her. But if you can get her to like NP5, then oh yeah, most definitely. You take care of the damage problem. She's chilling up there at an A+. She might even be an EX tier, like looping person, because she's crazy at that point. Same thing for Summer Mordred when we get to her. But they have an insanely good looping ability, but they just kind of need more damage. Thankfully, Melt kind of has a solution. The attack buff on the 3rd skill can be very nice when you're moving into wave 3 to push her over the edge because it's a really big attack buff. But I think that also is tied to her battery as well, where she absorbs your allies' battery as well, but it shouldn't be a problem because she should be looping fine enough. You shouldn't need to use it until the 3rd node, but you know, I've kind of spoken my piece. I think she's really good. I think being able to, I think it's the 1st skill that you're able to stack the arts buff. It's something like it's a 20% or 30% arts buff, but it's like a 5-turn buff on a 4-turn cooldown, so you can kind of stack it if you're going to use her in longer content. That's always very fun. And then if you want to bring her to more difficult content, I believe it's the 2nd skill that starts giving her like all the water side buffs, so she like gives herself sure hit and all that good stuff. So she's very, very solid. In the same way that, you know, I take a fat dookie on Canis all the time and I say that, oh, they should have given her a 30% battery so she can farm. That's because I wanted to be better. You know, I do feel that if you come out as an AoE unit and you're not able to farm, that is always going to be a donk on your record that you just need to be able to do that, because the player base at large is going to want to see if that's something you can do, because that's 90% of the content. Even if you can't do it super well, you know, maybe your NP gain or your hits are a little bit low, like maybe you're Muramasa where you could still loop, but sometimes you kind of struggle a little bit because his hits, he only has 3 hits, or you know, the Ushi Gozen that just came out, you know, she struggles a little bit. You know, maybe her hits need to be like 1 or 2 hits higher, but they can still get the job done. If you can do it, that's really all that matters. But Canis, they only gave her the 20%, but I'm kind of fine with it because I have been using Canis a little bit more. And if you want to bring her to more hard fights, which I do think, because that's what she's designated for, kind of looking at her in that way, I think she can be very, very solid. The ability to stack a lot of crit damage and start doing insane levels of damage, because she stacks what, the crit and the NP damage on her NP. So as she fights, she starts doing more and more damage with the crits and more damage with the NP. And that is very easy to do with people like Waver being a free-to-play, with people like Koyan Sky that lets you loop your skills back and kind of turn that 20% battery into a 40% battery if you want to think about being able to loop it, plus having, you know, 20% every time you fire one of your Buster cards because of the double Koyan Sky. But even if you have to bring a friend, still getting 10% off of your Buster cards can be very strong. So yeah, I think Canis is overshadowed a little bit, but I think you can get a lot of value out of her. I think if you want to bring her to more difficult content, you know, once we start getting advanced quests or even the current challenge quests, if you want to try to taking some of these units that you don't really bat an eye at, you know, and you take them out there, they will perform better than you probably will think. Romulus, I don't like having two Buster AoE servants in EX, because then it's like, well, one of them's got to be better than the other, but they're both just nuts. They're both just really, really crazy. I mean, I love breaking out Romulus. I summon for him. I have to bump a Rushka over because I think she's a little bit better. But I do love this dude. Like, getting to use this guy and then just stack a billion Roman power mod on people to just do insane damage, I think is great. Although, I gotta stick by my rule. Okay, they're both Buster AoEs. I'll knock him down to A+, and then I'll knock down Kagetora to A to kind of make sure this is not getting too top-heavy. But I do think he's really good. And even though we don't have the Romulus command code that we get with Lilim Harlot that lets you smack Roman onto people, this guy still already does it on the NP. So God forbid you bring him to an event where you're going to be firing the same NP on the same guy repeatedly, to start stacking the Roman buffs on them, you're just going to obliterate them. And it cannot be undersold on how funny it is to bring like Romulus, Boudica, and then Siegfried to fight, say, a dragon. You make him Roman, you give Siegfried the power mod from Boudica, and then, you know, Romulus can give him some extra buffs, and then Siegfried just does like 1.5 million damage outside of events. That stuff is super gimmicky, but it cannot be said enough how hilarious it is that we can do stuff like that. Eris, doesn't function right now. They'll fix her later, trust. Yumayoi. Ooh. Actually, I might have to bump Kagetora down, because I do think Yumayoi is quite a bit better than Kagetora as far as like being able to stack up to 60% NP gain, having the male power mod, and just being absolute loop champion of, what was it, 2022 when she came out? The looping quick unit of 2022. She's really insane. And that's coming from someone that really loves Kagetora. I mean, I have mine grailed on all versions of the game, and even then, it's like, nah, even I can respect that Yumayoi is probably the champ of between the two of them as a free-to-play Lancers. I do think Yu is pretty insane. I don't get to use her very often, but when I do, oh my goodness, like, I'm always reminded of how good this unit is. Vritra over here. Vritra, you're a very weird one to, but you know what? I'm gonna give the devil its due. Or I guess the dragons do, technically, for Vritra. So a lot of the problem that I've really had with Vritra over the past couple of years probably did stem from the fact that my Vritra was 777 for the longest time. I finally 10-10-10 my Vritra over on JP. And it, like a miracle, solved all of the problems. You know, who would have thought getting that extra like 5% arts buff would make her loop a lot better. I still do not like that the NP damage skill, the one-turn NP damage skill, is tied to the NP over time, because the NP over time on the third skill can be very useful on more tricky nodes where you need to kind of have that extra NP because maybe you're only looping 90% versus Berserkers. That extra NP is very crucial at times, but you don't want to waste the NP damage. But I guess you could say, you know, well, if you've got Black Grail and you've got Oberon, you'll probably make up for it damage-wise when it comes to the third wave. But she also has the Divinity Power mod that if you are fighting a Divine Archer or a Divine Berserker, she'll probably just smack him to death anyway. Plus, she gives the buff to the whole team, so congratulations, now your Castoria is kind of like a pseudo anti-divine person, so I don't know, I guess like she's better than I've been giving her credit for, and you know, I think after I finish 10-10-10ing her over on JP, that I'm gonna give her credit. I don't even need to talk about this one. You know, I already yap and I ramble enough. I'm not going to justify why Melusine is up here. I think we all know. Percival, I think, you know, now that I'm looking at all three of the AoE Arts Lancers, they're all just kind of good, huh? They're all just like really solid, because Percival just has a good kit. Pierce's invincibility, has a taunt that he bonuses off of. He's got the NP damage if you want to use him with Oberon. He's got a solid 30% battery, has a solid arts buff. You know, he doesn't loop as well as these two, but because he has more utility going into challenge quests with stuff like the taunt and the Pierce invincibility, I am going to give him that slight edge. Because Percival is very basic, but he's kind of just good everywhere. He doesn't, you know, he's not the best farmer compared to them, but that doesn't really matter, because if you can loop and you can get it done, then it doesn't matter if you refund 80% and he refunds 60%. At the end of the day, if you both finish the node, that's all that I really care about, is the fact that you guys got there. Because the only point that would start to matter is 90++ content when we get that, you know, going into summer and everything, in which case I might reevaluate my decision on that. But, you know, especially after I've been playing on JP with the 90++ nodes, that's still just kind of how I feel. Being able to get people like Durga and Muramasa to get through some of those, if you have the appropriate supports or pseudo supports that are also DPSs, you can get through most of that stuff. And if you can get through that, that's all I care about. So the fact that he's got a bit more utility in other places, I'm going to take Percival. You know what? I'm going to give him his due. I'm going to let him be up there. Dude, you don't know how bad. I just want to stick these guys in D tier and call it a day. But let me be fair. They're not all that bad. They might struggle to loop a little bit. Their damage might be a little booty butt cheeks, as I would say. But you can still get some value out of them, I guess. You know, having a 50% total battery and 50% arts mana burst is good. It's solid. They give themselves 50% defense on their NP. So after firing that, yes, they are tanky, especially if you bring, I don't know, Waver or Mash or both. That after firing an NP, they're really hard to kill, but I still don't like them, right? They've let me down. I had such high hopes for this unit, and when I finally got them on JP, let me down. They let me down. But yeah, the only thing that I think might be a little bit contentious is probably Percival up here, but I might have a higher opinion of Percival. I might have liked Lost Boat 6 a little bit too much, but I think everything else here, I think it's solid. You know, don't at me. Unless you unless you want to make your own tier list and then at me on Twitter and something. In which case, by all means do that. I'll probably reply. If your ad is cheeky enough, I might give it a reply. But and with that being said, this was a more fun one. I feel like this was more smooth than the other ones, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting better at talking through these tier lists. But you guys have a nice day. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys on the flippity floppity.